I read Rich Dad Poor Dad not as a financial advisor, even though I was one, but I read it as someone who needed real change. These lessons transformed my thinking about money, and they can do the same for you. Let's jump in. The poor and middle class work for money. The rich have money work for them. This is the heart of the book. It's the idea that most of us are living paycheck to paycheck, while the wealthy people use their money to create more money. Let's unpack this in 3 lessons. Lesson 1, stop thinking like an employee. Here's the thing. Most of us treat our paycheck like a lifeline. We get paid, we spend, and then we wait for the next one. But Rich Dad didn't see jobs as the goal. He saw them as a stepping stone to something greater. And quick heads up, the author Robert Kiyosaki refers to his rich dad and his poor dad. His rich dad is actually his best friend's dad, who seemed like this middle class, unassuming guy. However, he owned all these businesses in Hawaii and had a ton of people working for him behind the scenes, but didn't live this like rich, flashy lifestyle. Compared to his poor dad, who had a ton of degrees, eventually ending up as a PhD in the education system in Hawaii. But his dad was always living paycheck to paycheck, looking for the next way to increase his value to add more money. But he pigeonholed himself in his career, got to this very high level, pissed off the wrong guy and got fired. And so that was a big epiphany for the author of like, I don't want to specialize and get to a point where you can get let go. So that was the impetus for this book and the Rich Dad Poor Dad title, if you're unfamiliar. So the author used his job to save, invest, and eventually build something that didn't rely on a 9-to-5 anymore. For example, instead of buying the newest, fanciest gadgets, the newest car, the most expensive place you could possibly live, he put his money into assets, things that grow in value or generate income, or both. If this feels difficult, start small. Use your job as a tool to save and invest. Maybe you can set aside $50 a month to invest in an index fund or even start a side hustle. It's not about quitting your job tomorrow, but it's about using this opportunity as a next step. Lesson 2, don't let fear or greed control you. Kiyosaki says 2 emotions keep us stuck. Fear makes us cling to the security of a paycheck. Greed makes us spend every dollar we earn. I remember feeling both, and it's not like the feelings go away either, but I'd stress about saving money. But then I'd also spend the money on like eating out and just buying random crap because I deep down felt like I deserved it. Anyone else been there? What helped me and continues to help me is asking myself things like this. Do I really value this, or am I just trying to feel better in the moment? Later, I learned to implement systems for myself to keep my spending in check so I can still do the things I want to do, like go eat out or whatever, but still have money left over to do all the other things. Keeping these healthy boundaries in place on autopilot. Lesson 3, learn the game of money. Here's the bottom line. If you don't know how money works, you will always work for it. That's why Rich Dad taught the idea about assets and liabilities. Now, an asset is things that put money in your pocket. A liability is something that takes money out of your pocket. And that might sound confusing, but let's start with a simple example. In the book, at the time, this was really controversial because Robert Kiyosaki said, your house is not an asset. Even though every banker on planet Earth would call it an asset, he says it's not because it takes money to maintain. You've got to repaint it every several years, and it's not putting money in your pocket. It's taking money out of your pocket. Yes, I get it. It does appreciate over time, but he says a rental property is something that's an asset that puts money, positive cash flow in your pocket each and every month. So you want to avoid liabilities and try to begin acquiring assets. Exercise. You can look at your own finances and say, then this should take you 10 seconds. Am I building assets or am I only funding liabilities? The answer should be very obvious. If you begin to understand where your money is going, you'll start to see and recognize that you're spending money probably on liabilities and very few assets. Here's a quick rundown. Are you putting into a 401k? Are you investing in a Roth IRA? Are you saving for a down payment for a rental property? Are there other things? Are you doing a side hustle? Do you have a business that you're investing in? These are just a handful of examples of things that, count as assets. This is a simple idea to begin to shift your mindset about how you think about money. One quick story, think about playing Monopoly. Most people play Monopoly in real life, but just go around and around the board, never, ever, ever buying any assets. Don't be that person. And thankfully today, the barriers to entry on buying assets has never been lower than in any time in history. Here's what I mean. If you wanted to invest in the stock market in the 80s, you had to find a stockbroker, have some clue about what maybe stock you wanted to buy or trust his advice. And then he would say, hey, how much money do you have to invest? If you couldn't buy one share of a stock, then you're out of luck. Let's say you wanted to buy a stock that trades at $250, but that felt like, oh, a little too scary for you day one, which is fine. You're out of luck. Nowadays, you can get a bundle of stocks, aka a mutual fund and index fund, for literally $10 a month. So there's no reason to not be beginning your investing journey in some way, shape, or form for most people watching this video. You're only as secure as your knowledge. Here's a hard truth. Most of us, myself included, were never taught how money works. Schools teach us geometry and Shakespeare, but not how to budget, invest, or file taxes even. What a valuable class that would be, by the way. Here's where it gets interesting. Rich Dad believed that what you don't know about money is what actually keeps you stuck. Let's unpack that. Lesson 1, ignorance costs you. Rich Dad said, what you don't know about money is what keeps you broke. Think about it. How many times have you made a money decision that you regretted later? Maybe it was signing up for a credit card and you didn't realize how quickly the interest adds up, or making a big purchase you couldn't really afford. You can save yourself from the headache by just asking some simple questions to yourself like, do I really understand how this works? Whether it's a credit card, whether it's a lease agreement for a new car, just pausing to begin to educate yourself or talking to other people that know about it. And just quick aside, like I know for myself, I love answering questions. If people write in the comments below, if people DM me on Instagram, I love getting back to people and answering questions. And there are a sea of other people, of other financial content creators that are here to help you. So there's no reason to wade into a big decision with zero clue of what you're doing. Lesson 2, mistakes are a part of the process. Rich Dad encouraged mistakes. Not the kind where you like blow your rent money on lottery tickets, but the kind where you take risks, you mess up, but then you learn something. The key isn't avoiding mistakes. That's impossible. It's learning from them. The only way to avoid mistakes is to take zero action. So for example, if you want to start like an e-commerce business, but things don't go as planned, your marketing strategy might fail or your products might not sell. Instead of getting discouraged, you realize that each mistake teaches you something valuable, like improving your marketing, targeting your audience better. Mistakes become lessons, and your next attempt is more likely to succeed. It's not about failure, it's about learning, adapting, and growing. So in my business, I started this business in 2022 thinking that I've got this automation methodology like on lock, and I want to create a course to show everybody how they can do it, and it's going to be amazing. And it wasn't selling very well. And so some guy got on my DMs on Instagram, and I thought we were going to talk like social media marketing or something. And by the end of the call, I'm hiring him to be my first coach because he helped me understand that this is confusing stuff to most people, and most people want someone to help hold their hand and implement it with them. And now I'm a financial coach. Now that's 95% of my business revenue. Like I really don't make a lot of money on the course. I make money by helping people implement the system and hold their hand and walk them through the process. And so that's a huge mistake that I learned from, and now I'm way better for it. So don't be afraid to take ideally small risks and make small mistakes and build on that. Lesson 3, start asking questions. Rich Dad always said, the more you ask, the more you know. If you don't understand something, ask. What is an asset? What is a liability? How does investing actually work? You don't need to learn it all overnight. Just start with one question, then another. The more you learn, the more confident you become. The rich focus on building their own business. Everyone else focuses on building someone else's. This chapter hits pretty hard. Most of us spend our lives making other people rich. Here's what Rich Dad taught. Lesson 1, build something that's yours. You don't have to quit your job tomorrow to start a business, but you should have something that's yours, whether it's a side hustle, an investment, or even a skill that makes you money outside of your 9 to 5. If you're great at baking or photography or writing, there are tons of ways to turn that into a small income stream. The key is creating something that belongs to you. Lesson 2, small steps lead to big changes. Rich Dad didn't build his wealth overnight. He started with one small investment, one smart decision, and let it grow. The key, just start and keep growing step by step. So the irony for me is this book was a huge win in my life. However, I went out very soon after reading this book and bought a house when I was 23 and in the Coast Guard. I've shared more about this in another video, but basically I made all this money from renting out the roommates to other Coast Guard guys, and I just didn't have a mechanism to spend it. And so that was a failure that ultimately led me to creating the system that I now use for my family and all of my clients. And so in that way, it was a huge win. It didn't feel like it at at the time when I was, embarrassed that I was having my mortgage paid for and making $500 a month at the peak with 3 roommates, and I just pissed it away. But that's how life happens, right? We learn something and then we evolve and grow from it, hopefully. Before we wrap up, if there's one thing Rich Dad Poor Dad has taught me, it's this. Wealth isn't about how much you make. It's about how you think. It's about breaking free from the cycle of working, spending, and doing it all over again. So here's the question for you. What's one small step you can take today to start thinking differently about money? Maybe it's considering where your dollars are going. Again, that should take you 10 seconds. Maybe it's learning about assets, or maybe it's setting up an automated system to save or invest. Whatever it is, just start. Just figure out the smallest next action step and take it. And if you want to avoid common mistakes that could ruin your finances in 2025, check out my latest video, How to Ruin Your Finances in 2025. I break down the pitfalls to watch out for and how to navigate them so you can stay on track to financial success. Thanks for watching.